Good morning, and welcome to our first in a long time Spirit of Democracy service. It's wonderful to see you all today. Our opening words are from Jack Mendelsohn, the founder of all of this. Better? You would think I would know this by now. It just tells you age doesn't actually teach you anything. Anyway, our opening words are from Reverend Jack Mendelsohn, and they are from Being Liberal in an Illiberal Age. Here in this sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and the doers. In the face of cynicism, darkness, brutality around us and within, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb. Here we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it to give us the nerve and the grace, the toughness and the sensitivity to search out the truth that frees and the life that maketh all things new. So in that regard, we're going to start with our opening hymn, and Annie, thank goodness.
Actually, you missed the prelude. You were so excited to open us.
So we'll hear our prelude. Getting old, it just doesn't work.
So I think
We'll do the prelude. Let's do the prelude.
We will.
Sorry.
Thank you, Sandra. That was wonderful. And now we will have an opening hymn, and it will be O Life That Maketh All Things New, number 12 in your fabric-covered hymnal. I invite you to rise in body or spirit, or virtually with us and join in singing. Well, once again, good morning. And just a moment, there is a sound issue, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to fix it.
Well, let's not get carried away here.
We're gonna try to fix it.
Okay, this does not seem to be the problem. Sorry.
Okay. No, we are deeply grateful for our tech team, always, and especially for the hard work they do to ensure our virtual congregation watching on Zoom can hear us, which I presume is the issue as I hear the sound working in the sanctuary. They will keep on it so we can all be together. But anyway, once again, it's so good to be here with you all. I'm Reverend Annie Gonzalez, your acting senior minister, and I know we don't know who yet, but I'm so happy to know that I won't be your acting senior minister for too much longer. We are so grateful to the search committee who has found us a match to be our ministerial candidate for senior minister, and we look forward to more news. But it is good to be here this morning. You will hear more about what is a Spirit of Democracy service if you are not familiar, and you will hear more about our guest speaker. So I won't go down those topics, but I am just so glad that we can be together on this sunny, chilly spring morning at First Parish in Bedford, a Unitarian Universalist congregation where people have been gathering for centuries to try to find better truths and live in better community together. I have a couple of announcements. One is that it's Palm Sunday, and for those who are less familiar with the Christian liturgical year, that means it's the last Sunday of Lent. It's the Sunday before Easter, and they call it Palm Sunday because that is the story in the Bible is that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey and people waved palm fronds to honor his entrance. And that scene is painted in the painting at the base of our clock at the back of the sanctuary. And so it's a nice thing for us to remember on Palm Sunday, a piece of our history and theological tradition. On other exciting news, perhaps even more exciting than an old painting on a clock, is that our auction was last night. Woo! Yes, indeed. I wish I could thank by name everyone who made it happen, but y'all are incredible. That was so well run, and you pulled it off quickly, and everything was fantastic. The vibe was fantastic, the donations were fantastic, the snacks were fantastic. We had great auctioneers, great bartenders, and just an amazing kitchen setup, cleanup, tech crew. So thank you. We made over $19,000 for First Parish. So thank you to all the generosity that made that possible. And if you haven't yet picked up your items, or if you think, gosh, I did want to bid on something, or I wasn't there last night, or what have you, I hear there's a table to check it out. See a couple items that are not bid on yet, or pick up your things. And with that, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit for our unison affirmation printed in your order of worship. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en espíritu de amor, y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Good morning. So good to see everyone. And spring is here, even if it is a little chilly this morning. Can't hear me. Is that better? All right, we're just going to use the big voice today. Let me know if it gets too big, okay? If all of a sudden the microphone kicks in. So I have a story for you today, and it is about a Unitarian Universalist who used their voice to pursue climate justice. A lot of you are familiar with many people who've pursued climate justice as Unitarian Universalists over the years, and some of you, if you like reading the UU World magazine, you may have heard of this person. Has anybody heard of Levi Dreheim? Y'all need to read your UU World magazine. Okay, so Levi Dreheim lives a life, completely connected to his environment. Levi spends his free time planting sea oats and cleaning beaches and experiencing the joys of life along the eastern coast of Florida in his town, Satellite Beach. And Levi is a person, like many of us, who's worried about the effects of climate change on his beach and for all of humanity and the earth. The Atlantic Ocean is 5 minutes from his front door, and he sees it rising. He's interested in how the warming waters and pollution cause suffocating brown algae growth in the nearby Indian River Lagoon to his home. Now, at his church, Levi met the Reverend Dr. Gregory Wilson, an organizer with the UU Ministry for Earth, an organization that works to promote our 7th principles, respect for the interdependent web of life. Reverend Dr. Wilson invited Levi to join a class action suit of people suing the United States government because they say our government has taken actions that cause climate change, and by doing that, the US government has violated the constitutional rights to life and liberty. How many people agree with that? Y'all should be raising your hands, I'm serious. Like, the United States government definitely contributed to climate change. Okay, so now if they win their lawsuit, the US government would be required to develop and implement a climate recovery plan with a goal of stabilizing climate change and its impact by the year 2100. I left one part out. Levi was 7 years old when he joined this lawsuit. He'll be 92 in the year 2100. And I know there's some laughs that I did that for comedic effect. He was 7 when he joined this lawsuit. But this is a lawsuit specifically for young people. And it was started by a group of indigenous young people out in the western part of the country. And that's why the lawsuit was in the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, unfortunately, because this started back 2015, it's gone through at this point, and right now the group has been denied an appeal by the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals, and they are considering an appeal to the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, the 9th Circuit has ordered the United States government to work with the group of plaintiffs to see what actions might be possible in the meantime. So this is good news, that a group of young people from all around the country, people who didn't even have the right to vote, were using their voices in the democratic process that we have in our country to make change, climate change, which I know so many of us in this congregation care deeply about, especially those of us who currently have young people in our houses and are wondering what their climate is going to be when they are our age. So please remember, use your voice. It doesn't just have to be the grown-ups using their voice. I'm looking at the 4 of you and the 1 of you up there. We have a small group. Oh, and the 1 of you back there. We got a small group today because everybody's a little tired from the musical, and I see 3 more back there. We have to use our voices, okay? We need to use them when we vote. We need to use them when we encourage our parents to vote. Give your parents your advice. And that goes for the grown-ups who have grown-up parents. Give your parents their advice, too. Use your voice to help move our country towards better ways of being in community. Thank you all so much. I'm so glad that there's more children here than I thought when I first looked out this morning. So I invite you all now to proceed with me to our time together.
Spirit of democracy, that's how we get stuff done, right? We took a vote. Is it okay? Is a voice okay? But the spirit of democracy is just this wonderful event in memory of Jack Mendelsohn, who I knew years and years ago as our minister. But it's a chance to reflect on issues of the day. But it's a good idea to check back every once in a while with some of the issues of a prior day. This is a vision of democracy as seen in our Constitution for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in 1778 by John Adams. He's the guy with no hair. Now, I touched up the original just a little bit to take out the whereases and wherefores and therefores and whereases and all that stuff to make it a little easier to read. Just cleaning it up. Here it is. Article 3. The happiness of the people and the good order cannot generally be diffused throughout the community unless by the institution of a public worship of God and of public instructions in piety, religion, and morality. Therefore, to promote happiness and to secure the good order and preservation of government, the Commonwealth has the right to invest in their legislature the power to require that several towns, parishes, and other bodies politic to make suitable provisions for prayer, for the institution of the public worship of God at their own expense. Now, just to make clear what he had in mind, he added, and for the support and maintenance of a Protestant teachers of religion, to support the maintenance and for the maintenance of public Protestant teachers of piety, religion, and morality. Here's the kicker. In all cases, such provisions shall not be made voluntarily. In other words, you had to have this religious teaching, and you had to pay for it, and you didn't get a choice about whether you paid for it or not. Well, how's that for an establishment clause? As a congregation, our place decided long ago not to follow the Adams line, but instead to keep this place as a home for seeking the truth in love, and we do so willingly, without force or legal penalty. We have to do an auction once in a while, and maybe a plant fair and a rummage sale and stuff like that, but it's voluntary, never forced. Now, the congregation might make some suggestions, might never make a demand. But if you haven't, give you some hints and suggestions, but never a demand. And if you have yet to do so, please make sure that you've signed your pledge card and submitted it for the coming year. Be as generous as possible in this time of transition, so we won't have to go back to a demand of all the people.
Okay. Good morning. In 2017, I began writing letters to an incarcerated man named Phil. I had been learning about the many injustices regarding how people become incarcerated in the United States and how they are treated while incarcerated, and I wanted to do something to try to counteract this cruel and oppressive system. Phil and I wrote letters monthly for 4 years, and I was devastated to learn of his death in prison just months before he was scheduled to be released on parole. He was a kind-hearted man who loved his daughter, regretted his mistakes, and wanted to live a life outside of prison, helping at-risk youth avoid making the same mistakes that had put him behind bars for over a decade. In every letter that he wrote me, he thanked me for my time. He thanked me for the connection that we had. Though he had a daughter and adopted parents and some brothers and sisters, I was the only one who was writing to him. My letters to Phil, and now my newly matched pen pal KJ, wouldn't be possible without the Worthy Now Prison Ministry Program, and I share the following brief statement on behalf of Beth Murray, Prison Ministry Administrator, who couldn't be with us today. The Worthy Now Prison Ministry Program is a part of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, an online and by-mail Unitarian Universalist congregation. The Worthy Now Prison Ministry is currently supporting more than 1,600 members throughout the United States currently experiencing incarceration. There is no expectation that these 1,600 members make donations. There is no church-wide raffle, no plant fair, no auction, and they rely exclusively on the donations of our Free World members, grants, and the generous donations from other UU congregations to help bring Unitarian Universalism into prison facilities. How will your donation be used? Great question. We use donations to offer an introductory correspondence course on Unitarian Universalism to each of our incarcerated members, to send Quest Monthly, the CLF Fellowship publication mailed 11 times a year, to include pre-stamped envelopes with each issue of the Quest so that our incarcerated members can stay in communication with us, to send the UU World magazine published by the UUA twice a year, to send one reading packet and an additional correspondence course every year, to offer opportunities for incarcerated members to vote in the CLF annual meeting, and to write pastoral care letters. We try to create connection through our written words mailed to vulnerable members who have very little exposure to positive, compassionate, and accepting communities. Your financial support will allow us to bring Unitarian Universalism to those currently experiencing incarceration by paying for paper, envelopes, and postage. Please be a part of this important work by giving generously, and please reach out to Renee Nichols if you would like to hear more about becoming a pen pal. This is an opportunity to live your Unitarian Universalist values. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renee. So, as you may have surmised, we are sharing our plate this morning with the Church of the Larger Fellowship to fund their prison ministry program. As we do on the first Sunday of each month, we split our offering with our own congregation and a worthy organization that one of our members nominates. And so thank you to Renee, and please give generously to this morning's offering shared with the Church of the Larger Fellowship's prison ministry.
Does that sound okay? Okay. I have a riddle. What do the Reverend Bill Schultz, the Reverend Stop Shopping Billy, and Kitty Dukakis have in common? Well, at least one thing. They, and a wonderful variety of other individuals, were Spirit of Democracy speakers. About 20 years ago, our former minister, John Gibbons, wanted to honor our former minister, Jack Mendelsohn, for his outstanding 54-year ministry. And so he created Spirit of Democracy Sundays. Reverend Gibbons wrote, "In the world of Unitarian Universalism and beyond, Jack Mendelsohn singularly exemplified the possibility and power of human agency to make a difference. He is significantly responsible for making Unitarian Universalism what so many of us assume, of course it is, but which Unitarian Universalism always really wasn't. That is, a public ministry ever committed to freedom, justice, human rights, and the spirit of democracy. With human agency at the center, Jack Mendelsohn is largely responsible for making social justice essential to the DNA of Unitarian Universalist identity," end quote. That is a legacy worth honoring. Jack understood that our democracy is fragile, that the arc of the universe bends toward justice only by persistent, unwavering human agency, that democracy requires human embodiment to survive and thrive. Today honors Jack's legacy, but it is not for Jack, it is for us, because Spirit of Democracy Sundays are about us and for us. We meet people who embody the crucial values of democracy in their lives. Bill McKibben, working tirelessly to save the planet. Reverend Stop Shopping Billy, crusading dramatically, maybe even flamboyantly, against the excesses of materialism and capitalism. And do you remember Bree Newsom Bass? The artist, filmmaker, and activist who literally embodied the spirit of democracy when she climbed a very tall flagpole in front of the South Carolina Capitol building to tear down the Confederate flag after the murder by a young white supremacist of 9 African Americans at a prayer meeting in their church in Charleston. Spirit of Democracy speakers are gifts to us. Civil rights attorney Sophia Hall is a gift to us. They demonstrate that each of us can and do make a difference, despite feelings of discouragement or despair at times. They inspire us to stay deeply rooted in democratic values, even amid the challenges of an illiberal age. And Jack was always quick to point out, it is always an illiberal age. They renew our spirits so we can embody, individually and collectively, the spirit of democracy in any way that we are called. It is those values we hold and that agency we undertake that we honor today. May it be so. Now Rebecca Green-Neal will introduce our inspiring guest today. Rebecca.
Thanks, Judith. It's such an honor to have Attorney Sophia Hall here today. As an attorney in the Massachusetts legal community, there are other attorneys that I look to and I say, wow, I really admire that person. At some point in my legal career, I would say I look up to that person, and I would think that person, look up to that person like in age because they're older than me, and I want to aspire to that. Sophia, she has made quick work of her career, and I admire her. She is heads and shoulders ahead of me despite having graduated after me, and we are so lucky to have her here at what I think is just the beginning of what will be an even more amazing career ahead. I cannot wait to see what's in store for Sophia because she's already won an Emerging Leaders in Law Award from the Mass Women's Bar Association. The Mass Lawyers Weekly has awarded her one of the Top Lawyers of the Year award in 2020. Attorney Hall has worked her entire career in the public interest. She spent several years at the AIDS Action Committee and then moved to the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, Boston, which was founded in 1968, recently celebrated over 50 years of providing creative and courageous legal advocacy, education, and economic empowerment to underserved communities. She now serves as a Deputy Director of Litigation, doing really cool stuff. The stuff that lots of us lawyers who are in private practice would love to be doing. Okay, first of all, she has the pleasure of suing Governor DeSantis for tricking migrants into traveling to Martha's Vineyard. She's at the forefront of police reform. She is also at the forefront of the Me Too movement and the Yo Tambien movement, and runs the longest running election protection project in the nation. She's doing the hard work of challenging people in power, which is really hard work. She's making people with privilege uncomfortable and generally rabble-rousing in our progressive community that still needs to progress. And she's helping to move the needle forward towards equity and justice. I hope you'll all give a warm welcome to Attorney Sophia Hall.
I think I'm one of those short people that needs this, so give me just a moment. And I'll attempt not to fall off of it during my remarks. There we go. And this is why I bring my better half, because he signals for me, also the wrap it up signal when I'm going too long, So let me just start by saying, thank you to each and every one of you. It's really an honor and a privilege to be in fellowship with you this morning. As my husband and I drove in this morning to this beautiful town that I've never been to before, and even though it's pretty windy, a little nippy, I found myself just feeling so incredibly hopeful about the spring to come. And hope is something that will resonate throughout my comments today. And I hope that if I leave you with nothing else, it's something that you walk away from today feeling more hopeful than you started the day. And I don't think of hope as an easy concept. We're going to get there. We're going to talk a lot about it. But it's still what I hope I gift to each of you as a thank you for being here with you today. So I actually didn't know much of the history about this program, this very special event that you've been celebrating for such a long time, its deep legacy and roots. But that just adds to my honor of being here, knowing that I stand in the footsteps of so many people who have come and shared with you before, who have lit a fire under you, who have moved you forward when perhaps you had evenings where you found frustration and sadness in response to the news and the world around you. It's lovely to know that I can continue that legacy. And again, it's very much an honor to be able to do that. So there are some themes that Judith sort of hinted on here, and Karma, because she's sort of giving you a little bit of a sneak peek of some of the things I want to talk about, and so has Rebecca. But I think that just means that we're all in synergy together here today. I heard someone say once that when I enter a room, I bring my community with me. And so I'll say that again. When I enter a room, I bring my community with me. And I'll encourage you to think about this two different ways. You know, I think to myself, my community, my village, are my husband, my child, my parents, the people that formed me into the individual that I am today. I tell my clients that I'm their pit bull. You know, I'm the person that goes after everybody for you, small but mighty. And I believe that today, the pit bull that stands before you was somebody that was formed by her community. And so when I enter here today, I feel that behind me. I feel all of the formative pressures and love and history and memories that push me to do the work that I do. And then when I also think about the fact that I bring my community here with me, I think about the honor and privilege that I represent Lawyers for Civil Rights here today as we talk about the work that we do. And again, sneak peek from Judith here, it sounds like part of my community now is being one of these speakers in your community, in your group. So I stand in that community knowing that today that gives us all something, a gift, as we move forward to think about what sort of lives we want to live and what sort of challenges we want to raise. So I want to tell you a little bit about Lawyers for Civil Rights, and then we'll get into some of the fun of the good trouble that I get to do. So Rebecca, again, gave you a sneak peek. They're just stealing my lines here. Lawyers for Civil Rights originally began in 1963. And it started because President Kennedy called together about 200 of the nation's top private attorneys. Brought all those folks in a room in DC and said, you know, there are people who are marching in the streets, laying down their lives for civil rights. You have a responsibility as attorneys with privilege, to marshal the resources to take those challenges to the courtroom. And from that demand, Boston became the very first of the Lawyers Committee affiliates. We opened a Boston office of the Lawyers Committee in 1968. So this year we turned 55 years old, okay? And for people that know us well, because they call us legal warriors, they like to say that we get in good trouble. You'll know that litigation is our sort of weapon of choice when we think about advocacy, when we think about the way that we will make a difference in our world. And yes, it's a bit, maybe I'm buying into a bit of the stereotype, lawyers are litigious. We are, but we are litigious for the people who often never have a voice. We are litigious for the people who often do not have a dime to pay for that service. And we are litigious for what I like to think are really necessary, good fights. So let me give you some historical context, and then we're gonna move into modern day. So just by a quick show of hands, has anybody in the audience ever heard of the Lawyers Committee before? Okay, I'll take it. We'll start somewhere. So we are the law firm that desegregated the Boston public schools. So Morgan v. Hennigan is a 1974 case that led to the integration of the public schools. That's Lawyers Committee, okay? 1978, 78 to 80, we are the law firm that engaged in litigation to desegregate the Boston public housing units. We are also the law firm that engaged in litigation to create consent decrees to ensure race, equity, representation for police departments and for fire departments throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Some of those consent decrees still exist today, and it's unfortunate that we still need them, but they are there. And they are there because they are the legacy of the work of the Lawyers Committee in the mid-1970s. So that is who we are. It is who we have always been, you know? And from that meeting from President Kennedy, we are a group of small but mighty lawyers who work in conjunction with private law firms, the Ropes and Grays, the Goodwin Proctors, the Wilmer Hales of the world, and we work to do pro bono work with these big firms to bring really courageous legal action that is still so sorely needed in Massachusetts. You know, I say that life is really long, but unfortunately, struggles for justice are recurrent. They never really go away, no matter where you sort of look along that totem. You know, 55 years later, we are still fighting for equitable access in places that we were fighting in the 1960s, in the 1970s. Some of you may know that very recently, February of this year, we filed a very prominent education discrimination lawsuit in Massachusetts. We filed a case that challenged the admission criteria for vocational technical high schools throughout the Commonwealth. And some of you may not know this, but Massachusetts has one of the best vocational technical education programs in the country, and it is a highly sought after option for many young people who have a passion and a drive to engage in that line of work. Unfortunately, what data has shown us time and time again through the years is that the admission criteria they use to get into those vocational technical education programs are exclusionary in nature. Who gets left behind? Students of color, English language learners, and students living with disabilities. The disparity is drastic. And these requirements for admission, to be quite frank, they're unnecessary. And so very recently in February, we filed a lawsuit really challenging, why do these exist? Let's ask the question that no one seems to be asking. Like, why are these here? What are their purpose but for to exclude young people who are deserving of pursuing the passion of their dreams? And so again, 55 years later, we're still fighting for and thinking about access. We're still thinking about access in the education space. We're not desegregating a school, but we are fighting for fair and equal access still today. And people find that such a surprising notion, but I would say that more often than not, when we look around, we still find so many places in life where access just seems to be sort of shrouded behind a curtain. And as a lawyer, what I think about is it's our job to sort of rip those curtains open, right? Is to sort of bring that information to the light. So that is a lot of what we do. And we do it in lots of different ways. So education just being one of the 9 areas of law that we practice in. The other thing that has been really interesting as I think about that continuum of our history to today, the last 55 years, is to think about, like, what do we even mean when we say civil rights today? As we sit here today, do we think about civil rights the same way the 200 plus probably white men in 1963 sat before President Kennedy being told it's your responsibility to take these battles to the courtroom, right? Despite our demographics, like, what else is different in terms of thinking through those conversations? And another piece that I think is so critical, and I know from your church's involvement you believe this is so critical, is to step back from this notion of a black-white binary, right? That civil rights can only be about black versus white. But civil rights are immigrant rights too, right? And that is an easy idea to latch onto if you know much about the history of the development of immigration policy in America. I mean, 1974, we talked about aliens being anyone but free white people, right? We have always had quota systems embedded our immigration policy that were different for immigrants of color than white immigrants. We have always talked about immigration as connected to and integral to race. You really have never been able to have that discussion without the other. And I'd encourage you to notice that often, despite economic defenses for reasons why we cannot expand our borders, that many who do not necessarily look like the leadership of this country have slipped through without issue. So when we think about immigrant rights, I think of that as civil rights. And our office certainly thinks about that as civil rights. And so Rebecca started to mention to you that we sued Governor DeSantis. So I'll take a step back because I just think it's a really good example of what is so needed to do these fights, right? So in September of 2022, a few months ago, my boss got a call at midnight from one of our community partners. Heart beating fast, voice short, and they woke my boss up to say, there's a plane coming to Martha's Vineyard. They're not ready for it, they don't know what to do, there are families on it, there are children on it, there are migrants being sent from the border. And so my boss wakes us up, the team, and by the way, our team is 14 people, so we're small but mighty, and that's our office assistant to our executive director, and despite that, we take all the big fights against the big guys, right? We get the call, and by 9 a.m. the next morning, part of my team is on the ground in Martha's Vineyard, and they are meeting a plane that is arriving with 50 people that do not speak English, that do not have any resources or family or connections to Martha's Vineyard, small children who are afraid, adults that are sickly, people that are now thousands of miles away from their immigration courts to where they are supposed to report, some the following week, and they have absolutely no clue what is going on. And they have never heard of a place called Massachusetts, and they have certainly never heard of an island called Martha's Vineyard. And that is the context in which we found ourselves engaging with a community of people who were fraudulently induced at the border, who were promised aid that was never given, immigration resources, housing, employment, education for their children, to get on this plane and travel thousands of miles someplace new. And I think it's a testament to Massachusetts, the way that the community on the ground at Martha's Vineyard really rapidly responded to trying to help this group of people. And again, a testament, I think, to my team for how quickly they were on the ground to take interviews and start a legal process. Within 7 days of that, our team had churned out a 32-page complaint that we had filed in federal court. And the very first name for the defendants on that complaint was against Governor DeSantis, who had already at this point publicly taken credit for sending this group of people on a plane to get them out of his area, to get them out of his friend Governor Abbott's area, who had happily and gleefully acknowledged that these people were nothing more than a political ploy. And that is the world that we still live in, where people are not toys, people are not stunts, people are not hashtags for our social media. I mean, many of these migrants were Venezuelan immigrants who had to travel by foot through harrowing experiences to even make it to the border of America to seek refuge, only to find themselves have a government official lie to them, and then find themselves somewhere new. To be quite honest, I probably would never trust anybody for the rest of my life. But this is the work that we engage in. So now fast forward to today, a few months later, we have a very public and ongoing lawsuit against Governor DeSantis and others that were engaged in this scheme. More importantly, all 50 members of our current class action have been housed. Their children are beginning to go to schools. they are beginning to go through proper immigration procedures. We have found pro bono immigration attorneys for every single one of the migrants who were brought to Massachusetts. We have started what they call U visas, which is a pathway to immigration. It's an immigration relief opportunity for someone who is the victim of a crime, who helps the government, the law enforcement agencies, engage in going after that crime. We, for the very first time in this country, were able to have all 50 of these migrants certified as U visa recipients through the sheriff's office in Texas. And so all of these resources have come to bear very quickly, but because it was necessary, right? Not because we woke up today and decided what the civil rights issues of this era should be, but because we got a call at midnight and our community told us that they needed us to act. And so very often when I think about my role as a lawyer, I think about the urgency that I feel to act. I'm a first-generation college student. I grew up in a union family in the Midwest, and I think about the privilege that exists with being able to act. You know, so again, Judith stole my line a little bit here, but I think there are two quotes that really bring together the way that I think about some of the challenges, but mostly the hope of what I do. So, as Judith told you, right? The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice, right? We're all moving slowly in a story that has an antecedent and it will have chapters after us, right? We all play minor character roles in the story of life, but we all play really critical ones if we choose to. I don't know how many of you are familiar, and I told you I'm going to come back to hope because my goal by the end of this is for you to walk away with that one theme, if nothing else. There's a Black American abolitionist. She's a carceral activist. Her name is Miriam Kaba. I've only recently become familiar with her work. But she has this quote that I think is just, for me, it really resonates in terms of how I think about my work. And it's about hope. And her quote is that hope is a discipline, right? So hope is not an emotion. Hopelessness is. And it's okay to feel hopelessness because you can feel hope and hopelessness in the same breath and in the same moment. But to feel hope is hard work. It's to believe that although there are challenges to tackle, although 55 years later, some of the ills of the world are repeating themselves, hope is to believe that you get to play that small character role in the story of this life and to make it just a little bit better. That you are part of that arc that bends towards justice. And you may not necessarily see the end, but the arc is beautiful, right? And the discipline of hope, I believe, is beautiful. And I believe that it's so much stronger than the hopelessness and the darkness that we push back at every day when we choose to act. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. That was fantastic. And I literally just today on my way in finished the audiobook of We Do This Till We Free Us that I had been putting off. So the Kaaba, definitely right there. Everyone should read that if you haven't. We Do This Till We Free Us, Miriam Kaaba. We are now going to join in our closing hymn, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Here in this sanctuary of ancient dreams, wisdom, and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and doers.